Marcus Thorne adjusted his worn leather gloves and checked his rifle one more time. At 63 years old, he had been patrolling the outer rim of the Kepler 442 colony for nearly 30 years. Most people his age had retired to the safety of the inner settlements, but Marcus couldn't imagine life anywhere else. The wild frontier of this alien world had become his home, and he knew every ridge, valley, and dangerous creature that called it home. The morning air was crisp as he walked along the familiar trail that wound through the crystal forests. These strange trees grew like enormous gems from the ground, their transparent trunks catching and splitting the light from Kepler 442's twin suns into brilliant rainbows. It was beautiful, but Marcus had learned long ago that beauty on this world often meant danger. He paused at the sound of something crashing through the forest ahead. Whatever it was big and moving fast. Marcus crouched behind a cluster of crystal trees and raised his rifle, peering through the scope. His weathered face showed no fear, only the calm alertness that had kept him alive all these years. What emerged from the trees made Marcus lower his weapon in shock. It was a dragon, but unlike anything from Earth's old legends, this creature was easily 40 feet long, with scales that shifted between deep purple and silver depending on how the light hit them. Its wings were massive, stretching nearly 60 feet when fully extended, and they seemed to be made of the same crystal-like material as the forest trees. But the dragon was hurt. Marcus could see deep gashes along its side, and one wing hung at an odd angle. Dark blue blood dripped from its wounds, leaving a trail behind it. The creature moved with obvious pain, stumbling and nearly falling several times. Marcus had encountered dragons before on this world. They were intelligent, proud creatures that usually avoided human settlements. The colonial government had strict rules about not interfering with them, as they were considered a protected species. But seeing this magnificent being suffering stirred something deep in Marcus's chest. The dragon collapsed near a small stream about 50 yards away. Its breathing was labored, and Marcus could see its powerful chest rising and falling with difficulty. Its eyes, which were a startling shade of amber, looked around frantically as if searching for threats. Marcus made a decision that went against every regulation in the colonial handbook. He slowly stood up and began walking toward the injured dragon, keeping his hands visible and his rifle slung over his shoulder. He had spent decades learning to read animal behavior, and he could see that this creature was more afraid than aggressive. The dragon's head snapped toward him as he approached. Its lips pulled back to reveal teeth as long as Marcus's forearm, and a low rumble came from its throat. But Marcus didn't stop walking. He had worked with injured animals before, and he recognized the signs of a creature that wanted help but didn't know if it could trust. "Easy there," Marcus said in a calm, steady voice. "I'm not going to hurt you. I can see you're in pain and I want to help." The dragon's eyes widened slightly. Marcus realized that it might understand him. The colonial scientists had always suspected that dragons were intelligent, but proving it was another matter entirely. Marcus stopped about 10 feet away and slowly sat down on a fallen crystal log. He pulled his canteen from his pack and took a sip, then held it out toward the dragon. The creature watched his every movement with those intelligent amber eyes. "I'm Marcus," he said, feeling somewhat foolish for introducing himself to a dragon. "I've been living on this world for most of my life. I know these forests better than anyone, and I know you're hurt badly." The dragon's rumbling stopped and its head tilted slightly to one side. Marcus took this as encouragement. "Those wounds look infected," he continued, noting the way the edges of the gashes had turned a darker color. "And that wing needs attention if you're ever going to fly again. I have medical supplies back at my cabin. It's not far from here." The dragon tried to stand but collapsed again with what sounded almost like a whimper. Marcus could see the pain in its eyes, and he felt his heart go out to this magnificent creature. "I know you don't have any reason to trust me," Marcus said, slowly reaching into his pack, "but I'm going to show you something." He pulled out a small first aid kit and opened it, showing the dragon the bandages and antiseptic inside. The dragon's nostrils flared as it caught the scent of the medical supplies. Marcus took a calculated risk. He slowly stood and walked closer to the dragon, stopping just outside the range of its claws. The creature tensed but didn't attack. "I'm going to clean those wounds," Marcus said firmly. "You can bite my head off if you want, but these cuts are going to kill you if they get any worse." To his amazement, the dragon slowly lowered its head and rested it on the ground. It was a gesture of submission and trust that made Marcus's throat tighten with emotion. Marcus spent the next hour carefully cleaning the dragon's wounds. The creature flinched but never tried to hurt him. Even when he had to dig debris out of the deeper cuts, its breath was warm against his back as he worked, and he could feel those amber eyes watching his every movement. As he bandaged the last wound, Marcus looked up to find the dragon staring directly at him. There was something in those eyes that he had never seen in any animal before. It was gratitude, yes, but there was something else, something that looked almost like recognition, as if the dragon saw him as more than just another human. The sun was setting by the time Marcus finished his work. The dragon's breathing had improved and the bleeding had stopped. But the creature was still too weak to move, and Marcus knew the temperature would drop dangerously low during the night. "You can't stay here," Marcus told the dragon. "The night hunters will smell your blood and come looking for an easy meal. My cabin is just over that ridge. Can you make it that far?" The dragon struggled to its feet, swaying slightly but managing to stay upright. It looked at Marcus and made a sound that was almost like a purr. Then, to Marcus's complete surprise, it gently nudged his shoulder with its massive head. In that moment, something changed between them. Marcus had saved many animals over the years, but this felt different. This felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. The journey to Marcus's cabin took nearly 2 hours. The dragon, who Marcus had started thinking of as Shimmer because of the way its scales caught the moonlight, moved slowly but steadily beside him. Every few minutes the creature would pause to rest, and Marcus would wait patiently, offering words of encouragement. Marcus's cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by the crystal trees. He had built it himself 30 years ago, choosing this remote location specifically because it was far from the main colony. The structure was simple but sturdy, with thick walls designed to keep out the planet's more dangerous predators. As they approached the cabin, Shimmer suddenly stopped and raised its head, nostrils flaring. Marcus tensed, reaching for his rifle, but then he heard what the dragon had already detected. The low howling of shadow wolves echoed through the forest. "Damn," Marcus muttered. Shadow wolves were pack hunters that came out at night. They were attracted to the smell of blood and could track a wounded animal for miles. "They've picked up your scent." Shimmer's lips pulled back in a snarl, but Marcus could see the dragon was in no condition to fight. The bandages around its torso were already showing spots of fresh blood, and its injured wing dragged on the ground. "Inside," Marcus said, opening the cabin door. Quickly, Shimmer looked at the doorway and then at Marcus. The opening was large enough for the dragon to fit through, but barely. Marcus could see the uncertainty in those amber eyes. "I know it's small," Marcus said, "but those wolves won't give up easily. Please trust me." The howling grew closer. Shimmer made a decision and squeezed through the doorway, its scales scraping against the wooden frame. Marcus followed quickly, barring the door behind them. The cabin felt impossibly small with a 40-foot dragon inside. Shimmer had to curve its body to fit, its tail nearly touching its nose, but the creature seemed to understand the necessity and settled as comfortably as possible on the wooden floor. Marcus lit an oil lamp and began checking Shimmer's bandages. Some of the wounds had reopened during the walk, and he worked quickly to clean and redress them. As he worked, he could hear the shadow wolves circling the cabin, their claws scratching at the walls. "They'll give up by morning," Marcus said, more to himself than to the dragon. "They're persistent, but they won't waste energy on prey they can't reach." Shimmer made a soft rumbling sound that Marcus was beginning to recognize as contentment. The dragon's head was resting near Marcus's feet, and he could feel the warmth radiating from its body. Marcus prepared a simple meal for himself, but he found himself wondering what dragons ate. He had some dried meat in his supplies, but he wasn't sure if Shimmer would be interested in human food. As if reading his thoughts, Shimmer lifted its head and looked pointedly at the jerky Marcus was eating. Marcus held out a piece, and the dragon delicately took it between its front teeth. Shimmer chewed thoughtfully and then made that purring sound again. "So you like earth beef?" Marcus said with a smile. "Good thing I've got plenty." As the night wore on, Marcus found himself talking to Shimmer about his life on the frontier. He told the dragon about the early days of the colony, when every day was a struggle for survival. He talked about the friends he had lost to the planet's dangers, and the loneliness that had driven him to live apart from the other colonists. Shimmer listened intently, its amber eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Sometimes the dragon would make soft sounds that seemed like responses to his stories. Marcus began to suspect that Shimmer understood far more than anyone had ever imagined dragons could. "You know, Marcus said as he prepared to sleep. The colonial scientists would have a field day if they knew about this. A dragon and a human sharing a cabin, having conversations. They'd want to study you, run tests, maybe even take you back to Earth for examination. Shimmer's eyes narrowed and a low growl rumbled in its throat. Marcus held up his hands. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm not going to tell anyone about you. As far as the colony is concerned, I never saw you. But I can't keep you here forever. Once you're healed, you'll need to go back to your own kind." The growling stopped, but something flickered in Shimmer's eyes that Marcus couldn't quite interpret. Was it disappointment, sadness? He pushed the thought away. Dragons were intelligent, but they were still wild creatures. Shimmer belonged in the forests, not in a human cabin. Marcus settled into his sleeping bag on the floor near the fireplace. He had given up his bed to make more room for Shimmer, though the dragon hardly needed the space. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt safer than he had in years. There was something comforting about having such a powerful protector nearby. He woke in the middle of the night to find Shimmer's wing carefully draped over him like a blanket. The membrane was warm and surprisingly soft, and Marcus could hear the dragon's steady breathing. He should have been alarmed. He should have moved away. Instead, he found himself relaxing under the gentle weight of the wing. For the first time in decades, Marcus didn't feel alone. The next morning brought silence from outside. The shadow wolves had given up and moved on, just as Marcus had predicted. He checked Shimmer's wounds and was pleased to see they were healing well. Dragons apparently had remarkable recovery abilities. "You'll be able to fly again soon," Marcus told Shimmer as he changed the bandages. "Maybe another week or two and you'll be as good as new." But even as he said the words, Marcus felt a strange reluctance. He had grown attached to the dragon's presence in just one night. Shimmer was intelligent company in a way that no human had ever been. The dragon listened without judgment, responded without words, and seemed to understand Marcus in a way that surprised him. Shimmer looked at him with those expressive amber eyes and made a soft, trilling sound. Marcus had the distinct impression that the dragon felt the same reluctance about leaving. "Come on," Marcus said, trying to push away such thoughts. "Let's get you some breakfast and see how that wing is doing." But as he prepared food for both of them, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had fundamentally changed. The lonely old ranger who had spent 30 years living apart from civilization had found something he never knew he was missing. And in a few short weeks he was going to have to let it go. 2 weeks passed in what Marcus could only describe as the most peaceful period of his life. Each morning, he would check Shimmer's wounds and change the bandages. Each evening they would share a meal and Marcus would tell stories about his adventures on the frontier. Shimmer seemed to enjoy these tales, often making sounds that Marcus had learned to interpret as laughter or surprise. The dragon's recovery was remarkable. The deep gashes had healed completely, leaving only faint silver lines in the purple scales. The injured wing was stronger each day, and Shimmer had begun stretching it carefully, testing its range of motion. Marcus found himself learning about dragon behavior in ways no scientist ever could. Shimmer was fastidiously clean, spending hours each morning grooming its scales with careful precision. The dragon was also incredibly gentle, never once using its massive claws or teeth carelessly around Marcus. When Shimmer wanted attention, it would nudge Marcus's shoulder with its nose, always mindful of its strength. But it was the intelligence that truly amazed Marcus. Shimmer had begun arranging objects in the cabin, creating patterns that seemed almost artistic. The dragon would stack books, arrange Marcus's tools in neat rows, and even sort his collection of interesting stones by color and size. When Marcus showed appreciation for these arrangements, Shimmer would make that purring sound and seem pleased. One evening, as Marcus was preparing dinner, he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was coming from Shimmer, but it wasn't the usual rumbling or trilling. It sounded almost like singing. Marcus turned to see Shimmer's head raised toward the ceiling, its throat vibrating as it produced a series of musical notes. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, like wind chimes mixed with a church organ. The melody was complex and emotional, rising and falling in patterns that seemed to tell a story. "That's incredible," Marcus whispered when Shimmer finished. "Was that a song?" Shimmer looked at him and tilted its head. Then to Marcus's amazement, the dragon began to sing again. But this time the melody was simpler, more like a lullaby. Marcus recognized the tune after a moment. It was a song he had been humming while he cooked dinner the night before. You learned that from me, Marcus said in wonder. You were listening and you learned it. Shimmer made the purring sound and began the song again, this time inviting Marcus to join in. Marcus found himself humming along, and soon they were creating a harmony that filled the small cabin with music. It was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. That night, as they settled down to sleep, Marcus realized he was no longer thinking about when Shimmer would leave. Instead, he was dreading the day when the dragon would be strong enough to fly away. The next morning brought visitors. Marcus heard the sound of approaching hoverbikes long before they reached the cabin. He quickly helped Shimmer move to the back room of the cabin. Behind a heavy curtain Marcus used to separate his sleeping area from the main room. "Stay quiet," Marcus whispered. "I'll get rid of them as quickly as possible." 3 colonial enforcement officers stood outside Marcus's door when he opened it. He recognized the leader, Captain Sarah Chen, who had been trying to convince Marcus to move closer to the main settlement for years. "Marcus," Captain Chen said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "we've been looking for you." "We need to talk about what?" Marcus asked, not inviting them inside. "We've had reports of dragon activity in this area," Officer Roberts, the youngest of the 3, said eagerly. "Unusual behavior patterns. One of our long-range scouts thinks they saw a dragon near your cabin." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "Dragons pass through this area all the time. You know that." "This was different," Captain Chen said, studying Marcus's face carefully. "The scout reported seeing a dragon that appeared to be injured. Dragons don't usually stay in one area when they're hurt. They go to their nesting grounds in the high mountains. Maybe this one was too hurt to make the journey," Marcus suggested. "Or maybe your scout was mistaken." Officer Williams, the 3rd member of the team, was looking around the clearing with interest. "Marcus, you know the regulations about interfering with protected species. If someone were to help an injured dragon, they would be required to report it to the colonial authorities immediately." "Of course," Marcus said. "I know the regulations." Captain Chen stepped closer. "Marcus, I've known you for 15 years. You're not a good liar. If there's an injured dragon in this area, we need to know about it. Our xenobiology team needs to study how dragons heal, what their medical needs are. It's important research." From inside the cabin came a very soft sound like a sigh. Marcus coughed loudly to cover it, but he saw Captain Chen's eyes narrow. "I haven't seen any injured dragons," Marcus said firmly. "But if I do, I'll report it immediately." Officer Roberts was examining the ground near the cabin. "Captain, there are some unusual marks here. Scorch marks like from dragon breath, and these gouges in the wood. They look fresh." Marcus's heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "I had a run-in with a fire beetle last week, big one. Had to use a flamethrower to drive it off." Captain Chen looked at him for a long moment. "Marcus, we're not your enemies. If you're hiding something, it's for your own safety as much as the dragon's. An injured dragon can be unpredictable, dangerous. They've been known to attack without warning when they're in pain." "I understand your concern," Marcus said. "But I'm fine, as you can see, and I haven't seen any injured dragons." The officers exchanged glances. Finally, Captain Chen nodded. "All right, Marcus. But we'll be patrolling this area more frequently. If that dragon is out there, we'll find it." After they left, Marcus waited a full hour before going back inside. Shimmer was pressed against the back wall of the cabin, its eyes wide with fear. "They're gone," Marcus said softly. "But they'll be back. They suspect something." Shimmer made a low, worried sound and moved closer to Marcus. The dragon's massive head rested against Marcus's chest, and he could feel the creature trembling slightly. "I won't let them take you," Marcus said, surprised by the fierce protectiveness in his own voice. "But we need to be more careful. They'll be watching." That evening, as they shared their usual meal, Marcus noticed that Shimmer seemed different. The dragon was quieter than usual, and those amber eyes held a sadness that made Marcus's chest ache. "You're thinking about leaving, aren't you?" Marcus asked. Shimmer looked at him and made a soft, trilling sound that somehow conveyed both sadness and determination. "You don't have to go because of them," Marcus said. "We can figure something out. Maybe build a hidden shelter deeper in the forest." But even as he said it, Marcus knew it wasn't realistic. The enforcement officers would keep searching, and eventually they would find Shimmer. When they did, they would take the dragon away for study, and Marcus would never see it again. Shimmer seemed to understand his thoughts. The dragon moved closer and gently placed its head in Marcus's lap, looking up at him with those expressive eyes. In that moment, Marcus realized something that shocked him to his core. What he felt for this magnificent creature went beyond friendship, beyond the bond between a man and a wild animal. It was deeper than that, more complex. He was falling in love with a dragon, and the dragon seemed to feel the same way about him. The thought should have frightened him. Instead, it filled him with a warmth he had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, Marcus understood what it meant to have someone who truly understood him, someone who accepted him completely. But how could a human and a dragon build a life together? The very idea seemed impossible. The next few days were filled with tension. Marcus could see enforcement patrol ships passing overhead more frequently, and twice he spotted officers moving through the crystal forest near his cabin. Each time, Shimmer would hide in the back room, staying perfectly still until the danger passed. But Marcus was also noticing changes in Shimmer that went beyond physical healing. The dragon had become more affectionate, often resting its head against Marcus's shoulder while he worked. Sometimes Marcus would catch Shimmer watching him, with an expression that seemed almost tender. The singing sessions had become a nightly ritual, with both of them creating increasingly complex harmonies. One morning, Marcus woke to find Shimmer arranging objects again, but this time the pattern was different. The dragon had created 2 parallel lines of items leading from Marcus's sleeping area to its own resting spot. Books, tools, stones, and personal belongings formed a pathway between them. "What's this about?" Marcus asked, sitting up in his sleeping bag. Shimmer looked at the arrangement and then at Marcus, making a soft, questioning sound. Marcus studied the pattern and suddenly understood. It was a bridge, a connection between their 2 worlds. "You're trying to tell me something," Marcus said, getting to his feet. "You want to find a way for us to be together." Shimmer's eyes brightened and the dragon made that purring sound that Marcus had come to love. But then the light in those amber eyes dimmed, and Shimmer looked toward the door with obvious worry. A knock at the door made them both freeze. But this wasn't the official pounding of enforcement officers. This was gentle, almost hesitant. Marcus quickly helped Shimmer move to the back room, then opened the door to find Dr. Elena Vasquez, the colony's chief xenobiologist. She was a small woman with graying hair and kind eyes, and Marcus had always respected her genuine love for the planet's native species. "Hello, Marcus," Dr. Vasquez said. "May I come in? I'd like to talk with you privately." Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside to let her enter. Dr. Vasquez looked around the cabin with interest, her trained eye taking in details that the enforcement officers had missed. "You know why I'm here?" she said without preamble. "The patrol reports, the evidence around your cabin. You're harboring an injured dragon." Marcus started to deny it, but Dr. Vasquez held up her hand. "Please don't lie to me, Marcus. I'm not here in an official capacity. I'm here as someone who cares about both dragons and the people who live on this frontier." From the back room came a very soft sound, like a whispered song. Dr. Vasquez's eyes widened. "My God," she whispered, "it's singing. I've theorized that dragons might have complex vocal abilities, but I've never heard one actually sing." Marcus made a decision that surprised himself. "Would you like to meet her?" Dr. Vasquez nodded eagerly. Marcus went to the curtain and spoke softly to Shimmer. After a moment, the dragon emerged from the back room, moving slowly and watching Dr. Vasquez carefully. The scientist gasped and took a step back, not from fear, but from awe. "She's magnificent. And those wounds, they're completely healed." "How long has she been here?" 3 weeks, Marcus said. "She was dying when I found her. Shadow wolves had attacked her, and she had infections and multiple wounds." Dr. Vasquez approached slowly, her hands visible, and her movements calm. Shimmer watched her but didn't retreat. "May I examine her? I promise I'm not here to take her away." Marcus looked at Shimmer, who tilted her head consideringly. Then the dragon moved closer to Dr. Vasquez and lowered her head in the same gesture of trust she had first shown Marcus. "Incredible," Dr. Vasquez breathed as she carefully examined Shimmer's scales. "Her healing rate is remarkable. And the intelligence in these eyes. Marcus, do you realize what you've accomplished here? This is the first recorded case of extended peaceful contact between humans and dragons. She's not just intelligent," Marcus said. "She's special. She understands everything I say. She learns songs. She creates art with my belongings. And she's gentle. She's never once used her strength to hurt me, even when I was treating painful wounds." Dr. Vasquez looked between Marcus and Shimmer with growing understanding. You've bonded with her. Both of you. This goes beyond simple interspecies contact. Marcus felt his face redden. I know how it sounds. An old man falling in love with a dragon. But it's not just physical attraction or loneliness. It's deeper than that. She understands me in a way no human ever has. Shimmer moved closer to Marcus and gently nuzzled his shoulder. She began to sing, a soft melody that seemed to express everything Marcus was feeling. Dr. Vasquez listened with tears in her eyes. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Marcus, this changes everything we thought we knew about dragon intelligence and social capabilities. The enforcement officers want to take her for study, Marcus said. I can't let that happen. She's not a specimen. She's someone you love, Dr. Vasquez finished, and she loves you back. I can see it in the way she looks at you, the way she positions herself to protect you. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Shimmer carefully rearrange some of Marcus's books. The dragon seemed to be creating a more complex pattern than usual, incorporating Dr. Vasquez's presence into the design. There might be a way, Dr. Vasquez said finally. The Colonial Charter has provisions for special circumstances. If I could document this as a unique interspecies research opportunity, with you as the primary researcher, we might be able to create a protected status for both of you. Marcus felt a spark of hope. What would that mean? It would mean official recognition of your bond with her, protection from interference by enforcement officers, and legal authority to continue your relationship without violating protected species regulations. Shimmer had stopped arranging books and was listening intently to their conversation. Marcus could see the hope in those amber eyes. What's the catch? Marcus asked. There's always a catch with colonial bureaucracy. Dr. Vasquez smiled sadly. The catch is that you would have to allow limited scientific observation. Not invasive study, not separation, but documented research into dragon-human bonding. Other scientists would want to visit to learn from what you've accomplished. Marcus looked at Shimmer, who made a soft questioning sound. What do you think, girl? Can you handle having visitors occasionally if it means we can stay together? Shimmer considered this for a moment, then moved to Dr. Vasquez and gently touched the scientist's hand with her nose. It was clearly a gesture of acceptance. She's agreeing, Dr. Vasquez said in wonder. She understands the trade-off and she's agreeing to it. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. How long would it take to arrange this protected status? A few weeks, maybe a month. But Marcus, there's something else you need to consider. Dragons live for centuries. Their lifespans are far longer than humans. If you commit to this bond, you need to understand that she will outlive you by hundreds of years. The thought hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked at Shimmer, seeing the same realization dawning in her eyes. They had found love, but it was love with a time limit. Shimmer moved closer to Marcus and wrapped her wing around him in a protective embrace. She began to sing again, but this time the melody was different. It was sad but also defiant, as if she was saying that whatever time they had together would be worth the eventual pain of loss. Marcus hugged the dragon's massive neck, feeling tears on his cheeks. We'll face that when the time comes, he said. For now we have each other and that's enough. Dr. Vasquez wiped her own eyes. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow. And Marcus, what you found here, what you've both found, it's something rare and precious. Don't let anyone tell you it's wrong or impossible. Love doesn't always follow the rules we expect. While Dr. Vasquez worked on the paperwork for their protected status, Marcus and Shimmer faced a new challenge. The enforcement officers had increased their patrols and Captain Chen seemed determined to find the missing dragon. Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before they discovered Shimmer's presence. The solution came from an unexpected source. 3 days after Dr. Vasquez's visit, Marcus was checking his comm unit when he received a message that made his blood run cold. The message was from Captain Chen and it was brief. We know about the dragon. Enforcement team moving to your location. Surrender the creature immediately or face arrest for violation of protected species regulations. Marcus showed the message to Shimmer, who read it over his shoulder. The dragon's eyes narrowed with anger and a low growl rumbled in her throat. We need to leave, Marcus said. Now, before they get here. But Shimmer shook her head and moved to the window. She pointed with one clawed finger toward the sky, where Marcus could see the dark shapes of enforcement aircraft approaching. Too late, Marcus muttered. They're already here. The sound of hover bikes surrounding the cabin filled the air. Through the window, Marcus could see at least a dozen enforcement officers taking positions around his home. They were armed with stun nets and tranquilizer weapons designed specifically for large predators. Captain Chen's voice came through a loudspeaker. "Marcus Thorne, you are under arrest for violation of Colonial Protected Species regulations. Send the dragon out immediately and no one will be harmed." Shimmer moved protectively in front of Marcus, her wings spread wide despite the confined space of the cabin. Her scales began to shift color, becoming darker and more metallic. Marcus had never seen her do this before, and he realized she was preparing for battle. "No," Marcus said firmly, placing his hand on Shimmer's neck. "I won't let you fight them. They have weapons that could seriously hurt you." Shimmer looked at him with confusion and frustration. Marcus could see that every instinct was telling her to protect him, but he couldn't bear the thought of her being injured again. A new voice came through the loudspeaker, one that Marcus recognized. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. Captain Chen, I'm ordering you to stand down. This situation falls under my authority as chief xenobiologist." Through the window, Marcus could see Dr. Vasquez approaching the cabin with several other scientists. She was carrying a data pad and looked grimly determined. "Dr. Vasquez," Captain Chen's voice crackled through the speaker. "This man is in violation of colonial law. The dragon must be secured for the safety of the colony. Captain, I'm invoking Emergency Scientific Protocol 7, Dr. Vasquez replied. "This dragon and her human companion are now under the protection of the Xenobiology Department, pending completion of critical research." Marcus felt a surge of hope, but it was short-lived. Captain Chen's response was immediate and harsh. "Dr. Vasquez, your authority doesn't override security concerns. We have reports that this dragon has been exhibiting unusual aggressive behavior. It must be contained." "That's a lie," Marcus said, though he knew they couldn't hear him inside the cabin. "Shimmer has never shown any aggression toward humans." Shimmer made a soft questioning sound, and Marcus realized she was asking what they should do. The dragon was looking at him with complete trust, waiting for his decision. Marcus made up his mind. He opened the cabin door and stepped outside, his hands raised. Shimmer followed immediately, positioning herself protectively behind him. The sight of the dragon caused several officers to raise their weapons, but Dr. Vasquez quickly moved between them and Shimmer. "Stand down," Dr. Vasquez ordered. "This dragon is under scientific protection." Captain Chen approached with her stun net ready. "Dr. Vasquez, step away from the creature. It's dangerous." "Dangerous," Dr. Vasquez laughed. "Captain, this dragon has been living peacefully with Marcus for 3 weeks. She's shown no aggression whatsoever." To prove her point, Dr. Vasquez reached out and gently touched Shimmer's nose. The dragon responded by making a soft purring sound and lowering her head in a friendly greeting. The officers looked confused. This wasn't the aggressive behavior they had been told to expect. "Furthermore," Dr. Vasquez continued, "I have documented evidence of unprecedented interspecies communication and bonding. This dragon can sing, create art, and demonstrates emotional intelligence that surpasses our previous understanding of dragon cognition." As if on cue, Shimmer began to sing. The hauntingly beautiful melody filled the clearing, causing several officers to lower their weapons in amazement. The song was complex and emotional, clearly expressing intelligence and peace rather than aggression. "Impossible," Captain Chen whispered. "Dragons don't sing." "This one does," Dr. Vasquez said triumphantly. "And she's learned human melodies. Watch this." Dr. Vasquez hummed a simple tune and Shimmer immediately joined in, creating a harmony that sent chills down the spines of everyone present. When the song ended, Shimmer gently nuzzled Dr. Vasquez's shoulder. "This changes everything," one of the younger officers said in awe. "She's not just intelligent. She's like a person." Captain Chen looked uncertain for the first time. Even if that's true, the regulations are clear. No unauthorized contact with protected species. "Which is why I'm authorizing it retroactively," Dr. Vasquez said, holding up her datapad. "As of this morning, Marcus Thorne is officially designated as a xenobiology research specialist, and his companion is classified as a sentient research partner rather than a protected animal." Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. "Does that mean—" "It means you're both legally protected," Dr. Vasquez said with a smile. "Your bond is now recognized as a legitimate scientific research project. But Captain Chen wasn't giving up easily. Dr. Vasquez, you can't just change classifications without proper review. The Colonial Council will need to approve this. The Colonial Council already has approved it, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Governor Harrison approaching in an official transport. The elderly man who led the colony looked tired but determined. Governor, Captain Chen said, clearly surprised, I wasn't informed you were coming personally. Dr. Vasquez contacted me directly, Governor Harrison explained. She's shown me the preliminary research data, and I've reviewed the relevant protocols. This situation is unprecedented, but it falls clearly within the bounds of scientific exception. The governor approached Shimmer carefully. The dragon watched him with interest but showed no fear. Remarkable, Governor Harrison said. Dr. Vasquez, you're certain this creature poses no threat? In response, Shimmer began to sing again. This time a gentle lullaby that Marcus recognized as one he had hummed while treating her wounds weeks ago. The melody was so peaceful and beautiful that several people in the clearing had tears in their eyes. I think that answers your question, Dr. Vasquez said softly. Governor Harrison nodded slowly. Captain Chen, you will withdraw your enforcement team immediately. Dr. Vasquez, I want weekly reports on this research project. And Mr. Thorne? Yes, sir, Marcus replied. Congratulations on making first contact with a sentient dragon. You've just made history. As the enforcement officers reluctantly packed up their equipment, Marcus felt Shimmer's wing wrap gently around his shoulders. The dragon made a soft questioning sound, and Marcus looked up into those amber eyes that had become so dear to him. We did it, he whispered. We're safe. We can stay together. Shimmer's response was to begin singing again, but this time Marcus joined in. Their voices harmonized perfectly, filling the crystal forest with music that spoke of love, hope, and the beginning of something entirely new in the relationship between humans and dragons. Dr. Vasquez approached them with a smile. So, Marcus, are you ready to become the galaxy's first official dragon-human research team? Marcus looked at Shimmer, who nodded enthusiastically. I think we are, he said. I think we're ready for whatever comes next. 6 months later, Marcus's cabin had become the most famous research station in the outer colonies. Scientists from across the galaxy made pilgrimages to study the unprecedented bond between Marcus and Shimmer. But what had started as scientific curiosity had evolved into something much more profound. Marcus woke each morning to find Shimmer creating increasingly complex artistic arrangements. The dragon had developed her own unique style, combining natural materials from the crystal forest with human-made objects in ways that created stunning visual displays. The patterns seemed to tell stories, and Marcus had learned to read the emotional content in Shimmer's art. This morning's creation was particularly elaborate. Shimmer had arranged crystals, flowers, and personal items belonging to Marcus in a spiral pattern that seemed to represent their journey together. At the center was a small crystal sculpture that Shimmer had somehow carved with her claws, depicting a human and dragon in harmonious dance. It's beautiful, Marcus said, running his fingers over the delicate carving. You're getting better at this every day. Shimmer made her contented purring sound and nuzzled his shoulder. Over the months, they had developed an entire vocabulary of sounds, gestures, and expressions that allowed them to communicate complex ideas without words. Their morning ritual was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Vasquez and her latest team of visiting researchers. This group included xenopsychologists from the inner worlds, who were particularly interested in the emotional aspects of human-dragon bonding. Good morning, Marcus Shimmer, Dr. Vasquez called as she approached the cabin. Are you ready for today's session? Marcus nodded, though he felt a familiar tightness in his chest. The research sessions were necessary for maintaining their protected status, but they always felt intrusive. Having strangers observe and analyze his relationship with Shimmer made something beautiful and private feel clinical and exposed. Shimmer seemed to sense his discomfort. She moved closer to him and began to sing softly, a melody they had composed together that always calmed his nerves. The visiting scientists immediately began taking notes and recording the song. Fascinating, Dr. Melissa Torres, the lead xenopsychologist, murmured. The dragon is demonstrating emotional support behavior. She's responding to the human stress and attempting to regulate his emotional state through music. Marcus felt a flash of irritation. Her name is Shimmer, and she's not just demonstrating behavior. She cares about me. Dr. Torres looked up from her notes with interest. You attribute genuine emotions to the dragon? I don't attribute anything, Marcus said firmly. I know her. She feels joy, sadness, love, fear, just like any person does. She's not a laboratory subject. Shimmer moved to stand protectively between Marcus and the scientists. Her scales shifted to a deeper purple. A color Marcus had learned indicated she was feeling defensive. Interesting, another scientist noted. The dragon appears to be protecting the human from perceived social threats. That's enough, Marcus said, standing up. Shimmer, let's take a walk. But Shimmer surprised him by approaching Dr. Torres instead. The dragon began to sing, but this time the melody was different. It was complex and layered, with harmonies that seemed to express frustration and a deep need to be understood. Dr. Torres looked stunned. She's trying to communicate with me directly. The musical patterns, they're linguistic. She's actually trying to tell me something. Shimmer continued her song, occasionally looking at Marcus and then back at Dr. Torres. Marcus realized what was happening. She wants you to understand that she's not just an animal, Marcus interpreted. She's trying to explain what it's like to be her, to have thoughts and feelings that others dismiss as instinct. The song continued for several minutes, growing more complex and emotional. By the end, Dr. Torres had tears in her eyes. My God, the scientist whispered. She's not just intelligent, she's conscious, self-aware. She has a sense of self that's comparable to any human. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her recordings with excitement. This changes everything. If dragons are truly sentient, then our entire approach to them needs to be reconsidered. They're not protected animals. They're a sapient species. Over the following weeks, word of Shimmer's linguistic abilities spread throughout the scientific community. Researchers began arriving not just to study human-dragon bonding, but to attempt communication with dragons in the wild. The results were mixed. Most dragons remained aloof and uncommunicative, but a few showed interest in interacting with humans. Marcus found himself at the center of a revolution in interspecies relations. Shimmer had become the first dragon ambassador, teaching humans about dragon intelligence while learning about human culture in return. But the attention came with a price. Government officials began pressuring Marcus to move to the capital city, where Shimmer could be studied more thoroughly and where her communication abilities could be used for diplomatic purposes. They want to turn her into a translator, Marcus told Dr. Vasquez during one of their private conversations. They want to use her to negotiate with wild dragon populations for territory and resource rights. Dr. Vasquez looked troubled. That's not what we intended when we started this research. Shimmer is an individual, not a diplomatic tool. Marcus watched Shimmer through the window as she worked on her latest artistic creation. The dragon had become more sophisticated in her art, creating pieces that seemed to comment on the political situation around them. Her latest work depicted humans and dragons in separate groups, with a single dragon and human standing alone between them. She knows what's happening, Marcus said. She understands that they want to use her as a bridge between species, and she's not sure how she feels about it. That evening, as they shared their usual meal, Marcus broached the subject directly with Shimmer. The government wants us to move to the capital, he said. They want you to work as a translator and ambassador. It would mean helping your species and mine understand each other better. Shimmer listened intently, then moved to her art area and began arranging objects in a new pattern. The design showed two paths diverging from a central point. One path led to elaborate structures that clearly represented the capital city. The other led to simple shapes that represented their quiet life in the forest. You're asking me to choose, Marcus realized. Between duty to our species and our personal happiness. Shimmer moved closer and rested her head against his chest. She began to sing, and this time the melody told a story of love and sacrifice, of difficult choices and uncertain futures. Marcus understood. Shimmer was willing to sacrifice their peaceful life together, if it meant helping dragons and humans coexist. But she wanted him to make the choice to decide what was most important to them both. As Marcus held his dragon companion and listened to her song, he realized that their love had grown beyond personal happiness. It had become something that could change the relationship between two entire species. The question was whether they were strong enough to carry that responsibility without losing what made their bond special in the first place. Marcus made his decision on a clear morning 3 weeks later. He woke to find Shimmer creating what would be her final art piece in their cabin. The arrangement was breathtaking in its complexity, a massive spiral of crystals, flowers, and personal objects that seemed to tell the entire story of their relationship. At the center, she had placed the small crystal carving she had made months earlier, the one depicting a human and dragon in harmonious dance. "It's beautiful," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Is this your way of saying goodbye to this place?" Shimmer looked at him with those amber eyes that had become more precious to him than anything in the galaxy. She made a soft questioning sound, and Marcus knew she was asking for his decision. "We're going to the capital," Marcus said. "Not because they're forcing us, but because we choose to. What we have together is too important to keep to ourselves." Shimmer's scales shimmered with joy, and she began to sing the melody they had created together on their first night. But this time she added new harmonies that spoke of courage, hope, and determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey to New Geneva, the colonial capital, took 2 days by transport. Shimmer rode in a specially modified cargo hold that had been converted into a comfortable living space. Marcus stayed with her the entire trip, helping her adjust to the strange sensation of flying in a human-made aircraft. Their arrival caused a sensation. News crews and scientists crowded the landing pad, all eager to see the first dragon to voluntarily enter human civilization. But Shimmer handled the attention with remarkable grace, staying close to Marcus while observing everything with curious eyes. Governor Harrison met them personally, along with a delegation that included representatives from Earth's Interspecies Council. Marcus was struck by how different the governor looked, older, more tired, as if the weight of this historic moment was taking its toll. "Mr. Thorne, Shimmer," the governor said formally. "Welcome to New Geneva. I want you to know that we understand the sacrifice you're making by coming here." Shimmer approached the governor and made a sound that Marcus had learned meant gratitude. She had developed specific vocalizations for different emotions, and her ability to communicate with humans had grown remarkably sophisticated. Dr. Vasquez was there too, beaming with pride and excitement. "Marcus, Shimmer, I have some wonderful news. The Interspecies Council has officially recognized dragons as a sapient species." Shimmer's communication breakthrough has changed everything. "What does that mean practically?" Marcus asked. "It means dragons have rights now," explained Dr. Sarah Chen, a representative from Earth. "Legal protections, territorial sovereignty, and the right to self-determination. And it means that what Shimmer is doing here is true diplomatic work." Over the following months, Marcus and Shimmer settled into their new life in the capital. They were given a beautiful home on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by gardens that Shimmer transformed into elaborate art installations. The dragon's artistic abilities had continued to evolve, and her works were now displayed in galleries across the colonies. But their most important work was in the communication center that had been built specifically for dragon-human interactions. Shimmer worked with teams of linguists and xenopsychologists to develop translation protocols that could be used with other dragons. Her patience and intelligence made breakthroughs possible that had seemed impossible just a year earlier. The first successful contact with a wild dragon delegation was a moment that Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. 3 ancient dragons, each over 300 years old, arrived at the capital after months of careful negotiation. They were magnificent creatures with scales that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. Shimmer served as translator, but she did far more than just convert words. She bridged 2 entirely different ways of thinking and being. Dragons, Marcus learned, thought in terms of centuries and geological time. Humans thought in terms of decades and quarterly reports. Shimmer helped each species understand the other's perspective. The negotiations resulted in the Dragon Accords, a historic treaty that established formal diplomatic relations between humans and dragons. Territories were recognized, trade agreements were established, and most importantly, protocols were created for preventing conflicts between the 2 species. Marcus watched from the gallery as Shimmer participated in the signing ceremony. The dragon had learned to use a specially designed stylus to create her signature, a complex musical notation that represented her name in dragon script. Seeing her there, serving as an official diplomat between species, filled Marcus with pride that nearly overwhelmed him. But the demands of their new life had taken a toll. Shimmer was working constantly, translating for delegations, participating in research studies, and serving as a cultural bridge between dragons and humans. Marcus could see the exhaustion in her eyes, and he worried that they were losing the simple joy that had first brought them together. One evening, as they sat in their garden watching the sunset, Marcus voiced his concerns. "Are you happy?" he asked simply. Shimmer was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to sing, but the melody was different from anything she had ever created before. It was complex and layered, speaking of duty and love, of sacrifice and fulfillment, of the weight of being the first of her kind to bridge two worlds. Marcus listened until the song ended, then pulled out a simple harmonica he had carried for decades. He began to play the tune they had first hummed together in his cabin, the simple melody that had started their musical partnership. Shimmer joined in, and for a few minutes they were just Marcus and Shimmer again, not a diplomat and a xenobiology researcher, not the most famous interspecies couple in the galaxy, but simply two beings who loved each other making music together. "We've changed the world," Marcus said when the song ended. "Dragons and humans will coexist because of what you've done. Your sacrifice made that possible." Shimmer moved closer and rested her great head in Marcus's lap. She made the soft purring sound that had always meant contentment, but now it also carried notes of deep satisfaction and purpose. As the years passed, their love story became legend. Children learned about Marcus and Shimmer in school, about the old ranger who saved an injured dragon and discovered that love could transcend species. Scientists studied their bond as the foundation of interspecies psychology. Diplomats used their relationship as a model for peaceful contact with newly discovered sapient species. But for Marcus and Shimmer, the most important moments were still the quiet ones. The evenings when they would sing together in their garden, creating new melodies that spoke of their journey from a chance encounter in a crystal forest to a partnership that had changed the galaxy. Marcus aged, as humans do, but Shimmer remained constant, her love growing deeper with each passing year. They both knew that eventually they would face the reality of human mortality that Dr. Vasquez had warned them about years earlier, but they also knew that what they had built together would outlast any individual lifetime. Their love had become something larger than themselves. It had become hope for a future where different species could not just coexist, but truly understand and care for each other. In saving Shimmer from her wounds in that crystal forest, Marcus had saved something much larger. He had saved the possibility of love itself transcending every barrier that seemed to separate one being from another. And every evening, as the twin suns set over New Geneva, an old human and an ancient dragon would sing together, their voices creating harmonies that spoke of love, hope, and the infinite possibilities that opened when two hearts chose to trust each other completely.